Survival horror doesn't just scare you with dark hallways and creepy music. It scares you by carefully designing enemies that get under your skin and stay there. Some chase you endlessly. Some mess with your head. Some just stand there breathing, and somehow that's the worst thing in the entire game. Today, we're breaking down every major type of survival horror enemy, what makes each one terrifying, and the games that perfected them. Grab your herbs and ink ribbons. Let's go. The slow pursuer. This enemy doesn't run. It doesn't need to. The slow pursuer walks towards you with horrifying inevitability. You can outrun it easily, but it never stops. It follows you through rooms, down corridors, and sometimes across the entire game. The terror comes from the constant, unrelenting pressure. You hear those heavy footsteps getting closer while you're trying to solve a puzzle or read a file. Classic examples are Mr. X from the Resident Evil 2 remake and the Nemesis from Resident Evil 3. Pyramid Head in Silent Hill 2 also fits, though he's more of a psychological weapon. These enemies don't just damage your health, they damage your sense of safety. The Swarm. One zombie is manageable. 10 zombies is a problem. The Swarm throws large numbers of individually weak enemies at you all at once. The horror comes from resource pressure. You only have 7 bullets and there are 15 things shambling toward you. Do you fight, run, or try to squeeze through a gap? The Swarm turns every encounter into a math problem you're definitely failing. Classic zombies in early Resident Evil games are the blueprint. The Ganados in Resident Evil 4, the Necromorphs that pour out of vents in Dead Space, and the screaming hordes in The Evil Within all carry this DNA. Numbers don't need to be smart when they're endless. The Unkillable Stalker. You can't fight this thing. You can't even slow it down most of the time. Your only option is to hide, run, or die. The Unkillable Stalker takes the slow pursuer and removes any fantasy of fighting back. It creates pure powerlessness. The Xenomorph in Alien Isolation is the gold standard. It learns from your behavior, it stalks you through vents, and if you make too much noise, it will find you and end you. The Scissorman from Clock Tower is a retro ancestor. Jack Baker in Resident Evil 7 and the Wall Rider in Outlast also fit the category. These enemies steal your agency completely, and that loss of control is what survival horror truly runs on. The Psychological Tormentor. This enemy isn't just trying to kill you, it's trying to break you. The Psychological Tormentor represents something deeply personal, usually buried guilt, trauma, or repressed memory. The design is symbolic, not just gross. Fighting it feels like confronting something inside yourself you'd rather leave alone. Silent Hill built its entire legacy on this concept. Pyramid Head punishes James Sunderland for his guilt. The Abstract Daddy represents Angela's abuse. These monsters don't just appear in the story, they are the story. More modern examples include the hallucination enemies in Layers of Fear and some of the creature designs in Soma. When you understand what they mean, they become even harder to look at. The body horror. This enemy used to be human. Now it's something deeply wrong. Limbs are twisted, bones are where they shouldn't be, and flesh moves in ways that make your stomach turn. The body horror works on pure visceral disgust. It makes you feel physically uncomfortable just looking at it. The Necromorphs from Dead Space are the kings of this category. Every single one is a former person twisted into a weapon by the marker signal. The Regenerators in Resident Evil 4 with their twitching bodies and heavy breathing are another standout. Silent Hill's nurses with their twitchy movements and wrapped faces sit at the intersection of body horror and psychological horror. These enemies make you dread the camera zoom. The Ambusher. The Ambusher waits. It hides in lockers, bursts through windows, drops from ceilings, or plays dead on the floor until you step too close. Its entire purpose is to break your sense of predictability. You start to fear every corner because one of them might be hiding behind it. The zombie dogs crashing through the hallway window in the original Resident Evil are one of the most famous examples in gaming history. The liquor hanging from the ceiling in Resident Evil 2 also fits. Crimson Heads in the Resident Evil remake add a terrifying twist because you think the body is gone, and then it stands up faster than before. Ambushers teach you that nowhere is safe. The Distorted Humanoid. This enemy looks almost human, but not quite. Something is off. The proportions are wrong, the movement is wrong, the sounds it makes are wrong. The distorted humanoid triggers the uncanny valley response in your brain, creating a deep, instinctual unease. You can't immediately process what you're seeing, and that confusion becomes fear. The lying figure from Silent Hill 2, wrapped in tight skin and twitching violently, is a perfect example. The witch from Left 4 Dead, sobbing in the corner until you disturb her, also crosses into this space. The molded from Resident Evil 7, with their shifting black bodies and blank faces, are a modern take. You don't just fight these things, you feel wrong for even looking at them. The possessing entity. This enemy doesn't play by the rules of flesh and bone. It's a ghost, a spirit, or some kind of supernatural presence that can phase through walls, vanish, reappear, and attack you from angles physics shouldn't allow. Combat often requires special mechanics, rituals, or tools. Fatal Frame built an entire series around this concept. You can't shoot a ghost with a normal gun. You need a camera obscura to capture its spirit. The ghosts in Phasmophobia and the apparitions in Amnesia. The Dark Descent force you to face threats you can't fully see or understand. The horror comes from the unknown. You can't learn the attack pattern of something that doesn't have a body. The mutated animal. Before the outbreak, this was just a dog, a spider, a bat, or a frog. Now it's huge, aggressive, and probably covered in something wet. The mutated animal takes natural creatures we already find slightly creepy and pushes them into nightmare territory. Zombie dogs in Resident Evil are the classic version. The infected crows, giant alligators, and mutated sharks all follow the same rule. But the concept extends further. The bear in Condemned 2 makes an ordinary forest feel like a death trap. The mutant spiders in Metro, though more sci-fi horror, prey on the same primal fear. These enemies remind you that nature has teeth, and now nature is also rotting. The Relentless Horde. This is different from the Swarm. The Relentless Horde doesn't just pressure your resources, it forces you into a desperate, sustained escape sequence where standing still means death. The entire encounter becomes about movement, triage, and survival under overwhelming odds. The village opening in Resident Evil 4 is a masterclass. Chainsaw Man advancing while villagers swarm from every direction. You're not clearing the area. You're just trying to survive until the bell rings. The cabin fight later in the same game cranks it further. Dead Space 2's opening sequence with necromorphs flooding the corridors is another example. The horde makes you feel like prey being flushed out. The final form. You thought you killed it, but you just made it angrier. The final form is the boss that mutates mid-fight, shedding its old body and emerging as something far worse. This is a survival horror tradition. Birkin in Resident Evil 2 mutates through several stages before becoming a giant blob of teeth and eyes. The final boss of Dead Space, the Hive Mind, is a massive reveal after an entire game of body horror buildup. The final form works because it violates your sense of accomplishment. You didn't win. You just moved to the next phase. Now the real nightmare begins. Survival horror enemies aren't just obstacles. They're carefully designed tools of fear. The best ones stay with you long after the credits roll, not because they were hard to beat, but because they made you feel something dark and real. Which type gets under your skin the most? Let me know in the comments. Personally, I'll take 100 zombies over one unkillable stalker any day. If this breakdown helped you see horror games differently, subscribe for more deep dives. Thanks for surviving with me. Now go play something scary with the lights off.